Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life. And I have an absolutely amazing guest with me today, and that is Sarah J Naylor. Now, Sarah, I know through LinkedIn. We've had conversations. However, she's a coach and mentor, speaker and author, very similar to me. She runs her own podcast, Harnessing Happiness. She's a teacher and creator on Insight Timer, which is a meditation and well-being app. And her previous background is in recruitment. Vast difference.
Indeed. Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a wonderful intro. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Karen. It's wonderful to be here. So yeah, it is a bit different, really. But I suppose, but it's still people orientated. But I guess maybe you listeners want to know how I got from one to the other and all the bits in between. So I'm going to sort of start probably about 20 years ago when I got divorced at the end of a 20-year relationship. During those 20 years, I started in recruitment back in 1987, having met my ex-husband in 85, but I got into recruitment quite quickly, having discovered it as just through temping. Like, oh, I like the look of this, and sort of talked my way into working in recruitment and worked for a local agency, ended up being headhunted for a national, worked for them, and then left them and went to work for another local for 13 years. And during that time, and the last 13 years, I got divorced in the 2005. But I'd always supported my ex-husband in his businesses, because essentially he couldn't work for anybody else, and so he'd been self-employed since 1988. And so I'd done a lot, and I'd learned a lot around supporting him in self-employment. But I'd had the opportunity at one point to go into management with the national recruitment business, but I was pulled back by him. We won't go into all of the stuff to do and around all that, but essentially I was always supportive of him, but I don't think the other was true. So any sort of opportunities for me to expand were sort of not encouraged, quashed, etc., and so on and so forth. So essentially I stayed as a consultant working in recruitment for all those years. So when the light bulb went on and I did get divorced in 2005, I actually saw it as an opportunity to have a second stab at life in this lifetime. And it was like, wow. I mean, I hadn't been out. If I say I hadn't been out following the birth of our son, and he was 6 when I got divorced, I hadn't been out. I didn't have a social circle, didn't have anybody that I could go out with. Yes, I'd been to work, and I saw that as my social life. That was my social life. I mean, the stories we tell ourselves, because effectively I'd been maneuvered and manipulated into the position whereby the people I saw were his family, and occasionally saw my family. I'd get faces pulled at me when I was talking to my mum on the phone. And so I didn't expand because there wasn't the opportunity to expand. I didn't socialise outside of work really with anybody that I worked with. There might be the odd thing that we would have then gone to together, but for 6 years post having given birth, I think I went out once on a work do, and that was it. So I had to kickstart life from scratch, and I ended up back at home. Well, I say back at home, ended up back with my parents in my old bedroom, sharing it with my 6-year-old son, until the marital home was sold, because he was then rattling around in a 4 double bedroom, 2 bathroomed, put 2 staircased, split level bungalow house, which we'd done up because he'd got carpentry joinery skills. So we'd worked our way up housing wise, by me being like a main breadwinner and him doing all the carpentry and joinery. So we kind of pulled together as a team on that. But emotionally, it was hard, and it took me 6 years post-divorce to stop being impacted by his behavior and his words and how he spoke to me. So that's sort of kind of that side of things. So as I say, when I came to that point of suddenly I got my life to myself, Karen, I was free to be me, but who was me? Age 39, who was I? I started dating for the first time in 20 years, internet dating, which according to my ex-husband was sort of tantamount to prostitution. But what can I say? What can I say? Anybody that was on it was obviously a prostitute. Fine. Anyway, I sort of went into the dating side. I eventually got my own house. I was just starting to have my own life and starting to find myself and starting to meet friends and starting to do things. And 2009, I suppose it was 2008, 2009, I'd sort of toyed with the idea because we were going through a big recession, weren't we, in 2008, 2009. It was, and work was really hard. It was, I love the people that I worked for, but there was a lot of stuff going on internally. I've been there 13 years, it was 12, 13 years. And I thought I really do need to move away from this, but like, where do I fit in all of this? I've never managed staff. I know too much to be managed by somebody who hasn't got as much experience as me. I can't go and work for a national because they take on graduates or young people and sort of burn them out, basically. Where do I fit? And ultimately I realized I would be better suited to work for a small business and help them grow the business, because I got, I was solid. I was a solid recruiter. And I manifested 2 identical job opportunities that popped up through 2 different, not even contacts of mine, 2 people I hadn't ever spoken to before, who both approached me and said, would you like to come and work for us on a self-employed basis as a consultant? And it was like, oh, and bearing in mind at that, a single parent, got a mortgage, got to pay. But it was like this last lifeline. It was this image that I'd sort of conjured up effectively. I've manifested it. It was self-employment, not with people I'd worked with, because I'd actually approached them and they'd sort of said no. But I took that leap of faith. I had to go and get a bank loan to do it, and have that confidence in myself, which was that I could generate that income in 6, because the bank loan would only pay for 6 months worth of mortgage. So I needed to start to bring in the income to pay back the loan and also then pay the mortgage. So I had to then learn how to how to write a business plan. So I think it was Business Link back in the day. So I did that. I got the bank loan set up and I was working from home, self-employed from home. And that was the start of that journey. And then I made a bit of an error, Karen. I ended up back in another challenging relationship.
We all do that, don't we? We haven't learned the lessons yet.
No, we have not. However, what I am grateful for, and this is, I think, is a key, is looking at the experience with eyes of gratitude, because actually I learned a huge amount. He was incredibly jealous. He went through my diaries, he went through my computers, he went through everything and accused me of this, that and the other. I had to sever relationships that I kept quiet from my ex-husband, because I wasn't having an affair with anybody, but it was just like I couldn't speak to a male without having accusations. So I had to sever contact with, it was only like 2 or 3 men that I knew, that I'd known for many, 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 many years, and to comply, to be complicit. But because of all of this, I then explored regressional hypnotherapy, because I thought he'd got problems that were perhaps more deep rooted, which then took me, I found my Reiki master. He had EFT with her. It changed a lot. I then did Reiki with her, I did EFT with her, I did ascension workshops, I did all sorts of stuff with Anne, and then I started to do a bit of networking as well, met other people, went down, did a huge amount of work with a lady called Julianne Hart, and did a lot of work that then moved into deep spiritual stuff and evolvement. And along all of that lines, I also went to Mind Body Spirit event, which is where the sort of the transition then starts to come in, because I wanted to get out of recruitment. I wanted to get out of recruitment back then. I was just like, I had enough of recruitment. So even though I was self-employed, I was working under the umbrella of another recruiter. So we went to this Mind, Body, Spirit event in London, and there was somebody doing this access or consciousness. It was the bars. I don't know a lot about them, but you probably do a bit more than I do. And would you like a sample session? Well, I'm embracing everything, bringing it on. I've been reading books and all sorts of stuff up until this point and just really going full into it all. And anyway, I had this session. It was incredible. I had all my scalp manipulated, but at the same time, although I couldn't see it, there was a guy on the stage banging all the shamanic drums. It was incredible. All I was getting was like purple, this vibrant purple, this air. Oh my God, it was incredible. And they said, you will have, this will be a massive shift, it'll be a couple of weeks or something like that. I can't remember the finite detail. But what I will say is that while we were there, I was walking around stalls and stands, people marketing coaching, walked straight past them, didn't think anything of it at all. 2 weeks later, I'm going to become a coach. Just like, that's the solution. So I trawl through the internet, and let's face it, I mean, back then, that was 2011. That was back end of 2011. And there wasn't that much out there. Coaching was becoming a very, very big thing, but I was looking for a coaching training provider or somebody to teach me to be a coach. And I found Simply Changing, signed up to it, brilliant. Spent a year whilst I was working on a self-employed basis, because by that point, the person I'd gone to work for had sold to somebody else. And I was working underneath this guy who was totally unethical. His values total values mismatch. And so I went for it. I studied whilst I was working, and I was still in this challenging relationship. And then I qualified at the back end of 2012 with a level 5 qualification in performance coaching. Did some other workshops alongside of that, different modules. I started doing radio and TV, got invited on, was a regular guest on BBC Radio Nottingham. I became a loose lady on Mark Dennison's show on a Friday, which is always brilliant, just bringing some sort of laughter, etc. And then so that was the back end of 2012. Then 2013, I was just still working, but sort of finding my way, doing a bit of coaching, still doing self-employment. But I think it might have been during that year. No, it wasn't, because I think I was studying at the same time. So, but I just wasn't happy with the status quo with where I was anyway. And that was it, because I ended up going back to the employer that I've been with for 13 years, because I just could not stand working for this organization or under the umbrella of this organization. And you'll get this as well, Karen, I'd got this mindset that even though I qualified as a coach, and I did this kick-ass business workshop as well that sort of tooled me up even further with the same provider. But there are lots of other recruitment businesses out there, and I had this mindset of, well, why set up a recruitment business? So much challenge, so many other people out there doing this sort of thing. What's the point, basically? And I just ended up knowing I'd got to get out, because I'd ended up back at my old employers, and I found myself in arguments over shared fees. Like, it was like I was arguing over 50% of a third of an hourly rate temp fee. I thought, this is with somebody who'd been in the business like 6 months. I'm going, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I back here? This is insane. And ironically, a couple of the women that I'd worked with after I'd left that business to go self-employed, they'd gone straight into, no, one of them had gone straight into setting up their limited company, and another one that then had also followed me and gone into self-employment as well. And I kept on, I was getting comparisonitis as well. It was like, well, maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe, going through all this rubbish. So I went back, I had some more EFT, and suddenly that energy block had gone, Karen. And it's like, oh, right, well, I'm going to set up my VAT registered limited company, and I'm going to turn over 100,000 in the first year. And yes, I did. Just like
manifestation.
Manifestation, here you come. But that there's a caveat there, because my accountants changed my trading years. I don't know why they did what they did, but effectively it was 15 months of my first year trading. But I still had this 100,000 stuck on the side of the filing cabinet. And that's what I did effectively in my first year's trading, even though my first year's trading was incorporated an extra 3 months. It's a technicality, but it was like, so, I did it, and it was just brilliant. So I set myself up as, as a VAT registered income. That's when the recruitment business was born. That wasn't the plan, though. I was supposed to be doing coaching.
But didn't you do coaching in your recruitment though? Because obviously you'd be coaching clients or potential interviewers, interviewees.
I use a lot of my coaching methodology and techniques within coaching and working with clients. It really furnished me to another level with all of that. And I continued my sort of personal development, spiritual development as well. And it really it tore me up. But it was interesting because I'd qualified as a coach to get away from recruitment, and it was this inner knowledge that I had this sort of feeling that it's like recruitment was going, we're not done with you yet. We're not done with you yet. You've got to stay and do this, because it was obviously an opportunity to run a business. And I learned so much running my business. It was only ever a small recruitment business, 6-figure turnover. Just before COVID, I'd hit 200,000 turnover, which is just a small business, but it's still 6 figures, as our mutual friend Suzanne Fells pointed out to me. She said, Sarah, it is a 6-figure business. Stop diminishing yourself. And go, all right then.
Yeah, it's a 6-figure business. It's a lot better than a lot of people. And if you think about it, every business is different. And even though you didn't want to be in recruitment, what it taught you probably about people and running a business was so beneficial for moving across into full-time coaching.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I ended up seeing the whole life cycle. So yes, I mean, I set the business up. I then was doing it just very much on my own. Then my partner, that was an interesting point, because I kept on putting myself behind and last, all the time. I couldn't understand why I was doing it. He would make his arrangements, then I would make my arrangements after him. And I can't, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Even though I'd qualified as a coach and all the knowledge I got, why am I doing this? No idea. So I went back to my EFT Reiki master and said, I am sick of doing this. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And she said, well, look, we can do the EFT. She said, but, I have to warn you that it could mean the end of your relationship. And I said, well, I'm going to have to take that on the chin, because I cannot live with myself behaving this way, and I don't know why I'm doing it. So because I don't know why or how I'm doing it, because it's so deep rooted in my subconscious, I now look back and understand it was a protective layer. However, so I had the EFT. Long story short, 9 months later, he upped and left just before my 50th birthday 10 years ago. So that then released me, and I thought, do you know what? I'm not having another challenging relationship. I'd rather be single than be another challenging relationship. I can find my challenges at work. Be careful what you wish for. So I learned, like you said, I learned a lot running my recruitment business. It also, I was still doing my coaching. I had clients, and I integrated coaching into what I was doing recruitment wise. It funded my book, Shining a Light on You, How to Manifest Your Dream Job. I then turned that book into a digital course, which then I had to learn how to promote, and that took me down more personal development. And then we had COVID. Then I pivoted and set up my YouTube channel. Recruitment it was really impacted. So rather than actually seeing it as a problem, I saw it as an opportunity. So I did all of this stuff around that. And then I sort of limped along effectively with recruitment, because we'd had Brexit prior to that. I did a lot of bilingual recruitment. I worked with global businesses as well as national businesses and local businesses. They had recruitment freezes on the whole marketplace recruitment wise. In fact, it's still upside down. I've got lots of contacts in recruitment, so I'm so glad I got out when I did. But ultimately, I ended up in the position where I had to make the very, very difficult decision in the early part of 2023 to put it into voluntary liquidation. So I've seen that whole life cycle, and that is not a nice process to go through, because I was actually living through some sort of breakdown, as I was when I left my ex-husband 20 years ago, but that would have been 18 years ago at that particular point, because my son stopped talking to me. That's something else, obviously, which we can talk about if you want to talk about it. My business, I had to make my office manager redundant. I'd moved my office out of home. I'd had an office in the village. I'd had to let go of that during COVID because of, financially. So all these decisions constantly. It's like, oh my God, careful what you wish for. But I had then met Gareth during my partner. We're just living our best life. But yeah, so I had to make the decision to put the business into administration. We were both trying to sell our individual houses because we were planning to move to Norfolk. With my ex-partner, I bought a house in South Wales that I was trying to sell as well. It's still on the market now. We're not getting nowhere. I'm going to take it off. It's just a long story again with that. So I was juggling all of this stuff, and I ended up banging my head against the garage door in sheer frustration, Karen, because honestly, I had to sell my car to pay the mortgage. It's got no money coming in. Gareth couldn't contribute to my mortgage because he'd got his own mortgage to pay. And my son had stopped talking to me, and I think I'd got ill as well, which there's a surprise. There's a surprise.
Well, yeah, you will do, won't you? Because your body reaches that point where it's like, just don't want to deal with this. And sometimes it sounds awful, but we have to just let go totally. We just can't hold on anymore because it's an impossibility. And it's amazing what happens when you do let go.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I was trying to, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And you're trying to control this outcome. And I felt that every exit point was totally blocked up, cemented in. I was like, how? I cannot see my way out of this. This is just, and I just, what, I literally was banging my head against. When I say literally, I mean physically banging my head against the garage door so much that Gareth thought I was kicking it. I was headbutting it. I mean, that's not
That's not
healthy.
normal behavior.
That's not normal behavior. It's not something I would advocate for anybody to do. And then he had to stop me banging my head against the corner of the door. He said, he was seriously, I know we're laughing about it, but he was really worried. And
I'm not surprised.
Going through this horrendous sort of breakdown because I just couldn't cope with anything else. And in the end, I just thought, can't do anything. I cannot do anything else. So I had to just literally surrender, let go. And then things started to fall into place. And I also learned a lot about narcissism and did a lot of somatic healing around narcissism as well. And I really, even though I hadn't got any money coming in, and you would think that really my focus ought to be, I've got to build some money up, but I was trying to deal with the insolvency company and get paperwork together and everything breaking down. And I just immersed myself in all this somatic healing. I just thought, I've got to do this. It's just like, I was like, I'm just in my computer going, release, recycle, release, doing all of this stuff just to clear. And I say then Gareth's house sold. Unfortunately, my son's not now been speaking to me for 2.5 years, but there's an acceptance with that, which is a much more peaceful place to be and to exist. I then sold my house. We then moved to Norfolk. And then, as you've already alluded to, I then discovered Insight Time, became a teacher on there. I've also relaunched my podcast because I've had to press pause on that because the business was business went under. So, and I was dealing with the insolvency company, then we were dealing with the relocation and learning, and then I had to learn all about editing, relaunch a podcast. It's on pause at the moment, whilst I'm sort of focusing on some other projects. But actually, do you know what? I've had so much experience through all of that, which is how it tools me up to help other people, but actually to encourage people to understand that, what stuff happens, and it's like you've said, it's letting go. And I realize now that all of that stuff had to happen at that period of time, even though it was horrendous. And although I dealt with lots of other challenging things along the way that you would have thought had tooled me up, it had, but then it was like an avalanche. It was everything all at once, all at the time. But it meant that all that stuff that no longer served me was gone before we moved to Norfolk. So it meant that when we actually did arrive here, I wasn't carrying any of this baggage. Or as I say to clients, myself, would you take with you all your old clothes and your wardrobe? Would you really drag it along with you? You discard what you don't need, don't you? If it doesn't fit, it's worn out, you get rid of it. And that's what was the case. We've moved here. We go sea swimming, we go trail running. We've got a wide network of people that we've met since we've been here, and we've only been here 18 months, but we go to park run, got a sea swimming group, we go to boot camp, and we're just out doing stuff. The pair of us will talk to anybody, but it's about creating the life in the way that you want it to be. And as my dad said to me once, you can only ever play with the cards that are in your hand at any one time. You can only deal with what's there at the moment. So that is my story.
And the thing that I've realised is we can't control everything, so we have to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, quite often we don't realise what's happening in the background.
Exactly.
And we forget that things can happen without our knowledge that is actually going to help us in the long run. So, like you, I've had a breakdown, but it was that letting go that allowed so much to shift and change that has placed me in this position now where I am really happy in my life. And that's probably the first time since I was, say, a child.
Wow.
Perhaps at sort of 18, I was reasonably happy, but there were still things not right then. But now it's a totally different environment that I'm living in as me. And I don't mean the physical environment, I mean as me as a person.
Yes. Yeah.
And we forget that we can't control everything. If only we could, it might make it easier.
But then we wouldn't learn the lessons, would we? I mean, it's
No.
about, you can only control your responses and how you think, act, behave. You've got no control over the outcome. In fact, change is sort of the only constant. I read somewhere or listened to somebody challenging that, and I can't remember why they challenged it. It was something to do with energetics. I can't remember now, but even so, every day is different. However you think, and we all experience it in a different way depending on our internal drivers, our experiences of the world, and how we are. But the more we can do to work on ourselves and understand ourselves, and I don't mean understand ourselves to examine every bit, because I think that acceptance and that just the joy of being in the moment and understanding that stuff has gone in the past to make you the person that you are today, because actually you wouldn't have the wisdom that you've got had you not had to go through all of that. And I often wondered why, it took me all of those years before I became self-employed. I've been, I just worked as a consultant, but I'm always in recruitment, and I mean, I've dealt with and helped thousands of people on their career journeys, moving jobs, but I just always sort of had that sort of groundedness as I was. But, that all changed when I got divorced, because I got the freedom. And now I just like doing everything, and I have to rein myself in, Karen. I have to say, come on, so you can't. So, I mean, I'd like to get back to my sewing. I want to learn to knit. I need to learn how to do front crawl. I've got so many things I want to do, but I run out of time, and I want to get my podcast relaunched again. I need to go and look for a sponsor for that, and just so much stuff. And I'm in the process of creating a membership and learning how to do the technical stuff, which would be great to outsource it, but actually doing it myself to start with means that I will know what people can do when I do outsource it. So it's just,
Well,
it is what it is. I've just got to live in the moment and enjoy it. And you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen in the next half an hour. You just
no, precisely, and that's it, isn't it? So, to wrap this up, what's my big question for you?
Ooh.
What would you say was your biggest learning of everything you've been through? What's your biggest learning?
Oh, biggest learning. Wow. I mean, as I said to you, and I've already alluded, I mean, I've had loads of sort of lessons along the way, and I'd always had this belief that everything's working out wonderfully. Always had this belief everything's working out wonderfully. But 2 years ago, that was severely challenged, and how can all this be working out wonderfully? But it was. But actually, in saying that, now it's just reminded me of something else that's a big lesson as well. And actually, I suppose you can wrap it up into that actually too, if I think about it. It's about getting out your own way, because I wouldn't be in the relationship I am with Gareth if I hadn't have got out of my own way. It's ignoring all the societal pressures, the patriarchal pressures. It's all of that. It's understanding what energy is, and there's more in the unseen than there is in the unseen, and to read between those lines, not get caught up into that noise, because when you do, you get pressured and you believe all this fear mongering and all of this horribleness that's going on in the world right now, that is trying to be divisive, to breed fear, to divide people, so that the rich billionaires and oligarchs can control the world, so they can get a bit more money, then they can leave the planet. Why don't they just go leave the planet now? Just go, leave us to it, be fine. But you know what? Be true. It's about being true to yourself. I mean, I think I'd always had that, but my ex-husband would question it, and so I had to learn to get out of that and then sort of do the work on myself. So I mean, it's the one thing. I think it's all wrapped up in that whole personal development journey, and encouraging people to be true to themselves, that authenticity of being the self. Because we didn't touch on it, but I have got an alter ego, and when I stepped into the power of that, I organically grew an Instagram following of like 59,000 followers, and I'm an advocate for people just to be themselves, and whatever that takes to be yourself, whether you go through any therapies or just trusting yourself, believing in yourself, and doing all the things that you can do to explore that, to expand, to be curious, to have an open mind, to have a growth mindset, and to enjoy life, and just look for the simple things in life. I've never been materialistic. I just, we can have so much without having to break our backs to earn money, to buy umpteen coffees, handbags, shoes, cars, or whatever it is you want. Not to say if that's what you want, that's fine, but take a step back.
But you
and
can be
disassociate.
happy, can't you?
Oh,
With
God.
just anything. I was really happy camping with nothing, everything
Yeah.
in storage, because I'd been made homeless. It made no difference. I didn't need all those things around me. It was just really nice to be free from all of it, actually. So
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
So on that basis, I want to thank you very much. It's been informative. It's shown that no matter what you go through, you can come out the other side. And I think that's the one thing that people forget. It doesn't matter what we go through. We never go through more than we cannot manage.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much for being my guest, and I will share all your details when we post the podcast live, or sort of obviously when it goes out. And in the meantime, thank you.
And thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, Karen. Thank you for inviting me along and allowing me to share my story. Hopefully it will resonate with people, and that's always my aim. I just want people to either be inspired, motivated, and understand they're not alone, and how important it is to be true to yourself. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.